NFL, these things became the pinnacle of what black people could be in America briefly. And I don't like that personally. I don't like that. And it's sad in some ways that the closest thing we got to Martin Luther King is a fucking football player. But it's true. And this is because there's so many things that monetization of identity and monetization of culture and monetization of athletics and monetization of entertainment have limited people's capacity to excel based on their earning capacity. And then those things are dictated by the Nikes and the NFLs, which on the one hand, I'm glad that Nike is open to putting their money behind more progressive and more beneficial.
We're never going to have another Jimi Hendrix, because we're never going to find all of those factors in one person again.
Well, it was a unique period in time.
Yeah, it really was.
It was.
And even if we have like the most talented guitar players,
we're gonna have somebody that's better than Jimi Hendrix, but he's not gonna get the recognition until 100 years later.
or he's not going to have the personal style.
Or she.
They won't
Or
have.
they.
They won't. They'll have almost everything but that one.
Well, here's
thing.
No.
And
this is what I'm saying. We're gonna have somebody that's better than Jimi Hendrix, but they won't get recognized until 100 years after they're dead because of the propensity for people to romanticize what is dead and what's past, rather than being able to look at what exists.
No, but I don't think that capitalism will allow it to happen again.
Well, here's the reason I say it will happen, because right now we have youth that are bombarded with the most amount of information, the most amount of entertainment, and the clear indication that we've hit the peak of these things. So they're not looking to do them for the money necessarily, even though you have a bunch of old people who talk shit about millennials. Right now, we have the most advanced intellectual youths ever in presence of the most exploited entertainment and music scenes ever. So they're all going to go against that, which is the same shit that produced the Jimi Hendrix. So we're going to get a new wave of these types of musicians, but the older people aren't going to recognize it, because the new music that they come up with eventually is going to be so different than what we are used to that we're not going to want to acknowledge it. So it's going to take us and the people like between us dying off for that kid, whatever, what male, female, who they, to actually get recognized. And this is the crazy shit about information right now, is like nostalgia is a real factor that it can be measured, but we're not trying to necessarily measure it because people are capitalizing on it once again. So until it's completely exploited for all of its profit's sake, nobody's going to actually understand how much nostalgia affects your desires for something, because we can measure it. We could do scientific studies to say, oh, nostalgia affects your capacity to think about something clearly by 25%. You're 25% more likely to pay more for something if there's a nostalgia effect. You'll pay 50% more for something. We can measure it. We can put these things in numbers. Yeah. But the reason we're not getting that study is because it's still being exploited to all hell, because this is what marketing people do. So again, there's people who have these studies, and it's not to say that someone's not studying it, but the average person isn't getting access to these studies because they're hidden behind paywalls. You know, like R.I.P. Aaron Schwartz.
Yeah.
Because again, this comes back to the academics who are putting out these publications aren't getting fucking paid, but there's paywalls behind.
Well, that's the publisher, of course, right?
Right. Yeah. I mean, but it's
the publishers typically are just delivering a product. They're not actually paying the writer for the research.
No, fuck no.
The research is being paid for by grants and
if by grants.
Hopefully by grants.
Sometimes
very
occasionally by
like
grants.
Maybe once in a while there might be some that are funded by endowments.
Yeah, people have a skewed idea of how academics are working. A lot of them are working like pro bono, if you can even call it that, because they don't necessarily get
I think those are called
compensated.
I'm pretty sure those are called adjunct professors.
Or we can call them indentured servants.
Indentured servants, yeah, that too. Not work study. There's service learning. That was another one.
Yeah.
But these are all ways that academics can get stipends, which is another way of saying indentured servitude, I think. Fellowship grants. Fulbright.
No, this is crazy because I was on a pirate TV platform, and one of the shows they had was like, I became a sex worker to pay off my student loans or some shit.
Whoa.
And it's like following people who are in the sex work industry to pay off student loans, but somebody's now capitalizing off of that.
Wow.
So it's one of these things where we're in a weird time. This shit can't last, and the crazy part is like people would fight me on that notion that this can't last, but those people don't understand physics.
Now these are those are the people that are out there looking for some autistic DJ.
Right, yeah. Those people think Satoshi Nakamoto is some dude that did that shit in his mom's basement and is now living the life.
They're looking for a non-verbal person who just happens to be able to scratch like Qbert and generate flawless mixes every time.
Yeah, there's a lot to that narrative of, I mean, the Zuckerbergs, the Steve Jobs, the fucking Vitalik Buterins. This idea that there's a single person that can do all these things, even though it's always a team. It's always a team.
Yeah, well,
it's always a team.
Steve had the Woz.
I mean, but even
and then the
it wasn't just them two.
I know, but
yeah.
the Woz had a team. But and then it expands into these giant teams.
Exactly.
Like
these narratives,
development groups emerge.
Man, people have to identify things with individuals in the same way that when we look at the pyramids, we're like, oh, Khafre or whatever is the one that built. And you have to identify with an individual, even though it's clearly fucking thousands of people.
You know, so it's actually kind of interesting. Every section of the Great Wall can be attributed to a different like group of people, and it's almost like written in the wall itself.
But it's only we. As Westerners attributed to a single emperor that
started it,
that commissioned it.
Yeah.
He didn't fucking lay a brick. That motherfucker didn't lay one goddamn brick.
He might have looked at it once.
Maybe
from a distance.
Maybe he may have like waved a royal hand at it to approve it. Maybe just to show that there was divine approval.
Yeah, once he could see it. Once it was visible.
But that motherfucker didn't lay one goddamn brick. And all we know is his name associated with that wall. In the West, I'm sure is somewhat different in China. But I don't know.
I think the building standards would have changed slowly over time, and the techniques would have changed for the landscape, and so they would have had to like adjust. And every community that would have been close to where the wall would have been built would have had some hand in building it, because it's a big ass effort.
Oh God, yeah.
I mean, I'm sure that's actually one of the reasons that modern Chinese cuisine is the way it is, because at some point they had to figure out how to prepare a shit ton of food and keep it interesting for long enough. I mean, that's like a huge public works project.
Right.
Holy shit.
Well, it's funny you say that, because there probably was some public declaration, like even thousands of years ago, in the sense that it's something that they did in modern Turkey to have a mandated public breakfast. There's a state mandated breakfast where you can't go outside of that if you're serving breakfast in like a public.
That's cool.
If it's like a hotel or something that's serving a bunch of people. Like if you have a breakfast restaurant, you can serve your own shit. But if it's like a hotel where you have breakfast for free.
Oh, like a continental breakfast.
The continental breakfast, yeah.
Yeah.
It has to be. There's certain displays that it has to be, whether there's like deli meat, certain types of bread, then there's fruit you have to have, and then there's all. I think there's certain elements that are more important than others. Like the bread and fruit are most important, and if you don't have the meat, that's okay, as far as I know. But you have to have the bread and you have to have the fruit if you say it's a Turkish breakfast, or else you can't say it's a Turkish breakfast. And that's like a state mandated thing where you're saying that the idea of creating national culture is in the best interest of the state or the emperor or the empire or whatever you want to abstract it to. So this is why they do create laws to protect the culture. So again, I'm sure I would not be surprised if there's some random sounding law that's making, like, if you call it Szechuan sauce, it has to come from the Szechuan fucking province.
It has to have Szechuan peppercorns.
Right. Or
and it has to do
if it only has the Szechuan peppercorns, then you can't call it Szechuan chicken.
Yeah.
Like, there's probably a law on the books like that goes back hundreds, maybe even 1,000 years in China.
Well, I know that there's like, I remember staying up really late one time and when I was in China and like just watched, CCTV, and the only channel that I could find in English, it was like a documentary on vinegar. Like, and they've got vinegar. They've got a spectrum of vinegars. They've got vinegars that'll help you heal faster, and vinegars that'll help, like, get rid of, toenail fungus. You don't cook with that one, but there's one that's really similar to it that looks and smells just the same that you can, and it works with ginger really, stuff like that. Really weird, like, highly specialized vinegars. And then the next thing that came up was a tofu thing. It's like it was just as complex. There's frying tofu and soup tofu and stuff that stuff that you use with steamed vegetables. Even there's some that have textures, and some that don't, and it's really cool. It's actually kind of similar to cheese, but I guess not really, because it's not made of milk. But anyways, what I'm getting at is that
in the way they.
But there's this like clear regional delineation of the different types of tofu, like and even within each region there's the varying types of tofu, and it was all very specific. And in one region it's like, the cuisine is saltier, and then the next it's sweeter, and so the tofu is kind of reflect like how do they best absorb these palettes, these flavor profiles. It's really interesting. You can get two types of tofu that are both for frying, but are from different regions, and they'll be distinctly different. You'll be able to look at them and be like, they're not the same, but they're for the same purpose. And that's kind of neat.
Yeah, that's really cool.
And then, of course, the one that I always thought the funniest was that beer had a variable alcohol content between like I think it was like between like 3 and 4, or 3 and 4.5% beer. And then we got to one part of the country where it was like between 1.5% and 3%. It was like they had some low alcohol content beer. It's basically like purified, or no, not purified, sanitized water.
Basically.
It was cheaper than bottled water. That's kind of sad, actually. That's bottled water culture in full effect. That's.
Yeah. That's really crazy.
And the beer is cheaper than wine. I'm sure there are some people out there who would be like, woo! But, my experience with that stuff was you had to drink it, like, all the time to catch a buzz. And as soon as you stopped drinking it, the buzz started to go away. Because it was, it was May in China, and it felt like August in Indiana.
Yeah.
June, late July, August. And that's it was kind of fucked up, actually. Although I do remember that the rice wine, they had this really dark brown rice wine. It was kind of like whiskey, and it was strong, but it didn't taste bad. And it was really good. I did get up and leave the table, and I ended up outside, and 30 minutes later it was done, because I just like sweat it all out. And also I think rice wines do that to you. They don't last long. They're in and out real quick.
Or rice beer,
yeah, any of that stuff. Like it's easier to metabolize.
Yeah, I think you're right.
There's a rice beer from I think it's Czech. It's called Stiglitz, that's a really tasty rice beer. Almost, I think it's like on par with like some of the Chinese rice beers. Like, God, I can't even remember their names. It's been so long. I remember trying these like they were really kind of nondescript, like solid color labels. But there was one that was brown, and it was like a 12% alcohol. It was like a malt liquor, and it was like it was great, but it tasted like brown rice. You know,
interesting.
It was really strong.
Damn.
I wish I could find that again, actually.
Yeah. Well, it's weird because I know with a lot of
I'm in no way a connoisseur of rice wines. I just remember, like, 2 weeks of drinking rice alcohol. So.
Well, it tastes different just because I know when I taste beer and it gets past 9%, it starts to taste like wine.
Yeah.
Like the port style, I guess. But I imagine with rice at 12%, it wouldn't taste like wine because there's no.
No, it tasted like rice.
Huh.
It tasted like brown rice.
That's interesting.
It was really cool. I mean, it had some kick to it.
Mm-hmm.
It was like a brown rice malt liquor, basically.
Yeah.
So imagine like a Colt or an OE, and change out that malty flavor for a more rice, like brown rice flavor.
Sounds delicious.
Yeah, it was really crisp. It was really clean. It wasn't like bitter at all. There was no whatever that quality is that comes with hops.
Mm-hmm.
It was a very low hoppy quality, and it was just easy to drink.
Yeah.
30 minutes after I drank it, it was pretty much out.
Well, that's where
But it was really strong.
the rice beers tend, I guess, to my palate, taste more like the Belgian wheat style brew than
the Abbey ales, those doubles and tripels.
Oh, yeah. Because they use like coriander and shit in there. Those are really good.
That stuff's amazing.
Yeah.
I feel like those have a much more like a soft drink, like a Coca-Cola on the palate consistency, like the bubbles. I actually kind of like that. What I don't like about some of those Abbey ales, like Coors and Donk or Track, is that if they aren't, it's hard to tell when they're past their prime.
Yeah.
And I've had a few that was just like I couldn't tell, and I regretted it the next day.
Well, that's funny. So with I still drink IPAs, and what would happen is I would leave them open, and then the next day I'm like, oh, it still tastes good, and then so I ended up saving them, and I would tell my brewer friend that, and then he told me that the whole reason they were brewed that way was to keep them on long trips.
Yeah.
So it was a specific style of brewing to make it so that the beer holds longer than
and
normal.
Survives the temperature fluctuation.
Yeah, so that's where my instincts were right in being, predisposed to not throw out the beer. But then once I found out the reason why, it's like, holy shit, this is an interesting.
Well, I think that's part of what makes beer interesting, is that there's quite a few different types of brewing processes. Mm-hmm. There's several different ingredient matrices that are common, and some of them don't keep.
Oh God, no! Most of them don't.
Some of them, as soon as you open it up, they start oxidizing and they turn on you, and then next thing you know, it's just.
Well, and that's one of the reasons I like IPAs more in general. Is just they're stronger, so you don't need to drink a lot of them and get that.
You get where you need to be.
Yeah. It's like an actual beer for the beer experience.
Yeah. I want to like IPAs, but so many of them that I've tried in the last few years have just been like, hop stravaganza. And I feel like when I was in my early 20s, I was like, ooh, this is cool and exciting, but more and more, I want something that's like, just like crisp.
Yeah.
I actually really like ciders, hard ciders, for that reason.
IPAs that have more citrus balance are a lot less hoppy.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously, but that's where I think hops are definitely an acquired taste, but if you have it toned down, it does end up still giving you the kick without the overbearing hop flavor.
I've always thought it was interesting, like the idea of, you can brew practically everything.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I remember
potatoes and shit.
Yeah, potato. make some serious business vodka.
Right. Yeah. Some jailhouse vodka right there.
Well, that's like the real vodka.
Oh yeah, no, for sure.
And nowadays, I think most of the vodkas on the shelves are made out of corn. So it's all basically moonshine. I'm pretty sure you can make vodka out of anything. I think they can make vodka out of grapes if they want to.
Problem, sure, yeah.
I mean, it's just like the most neutral distilled alcohol next to moonshine.
Yeah, if you can make it out of fucking corn, you gotta be able to make it out of grapes.
Yeah. I think Ciroc is made out of grapes.
I feel like apple vodka will probably be really good.
Apple vodka sounds great.
Especially if you're getting like Granny Smith or some shit. I mean, obviously,
I know this stuff exists, but like from a straight up apple.
Yeah.
Not like Smirnoff apple teeny blender.
Right. No,
but like
that's exactly.
But an actual apple derived vodka.
Exactly. Yeah. I'm sure, but I want the part of it is doing the process without stripping the flavor.
Well, maybe that's it's like with the distillate industry. They have to pull the flavor out and then put it back in.
Oh, you're probably right.
Because otherwise, I bet the distillation process destroys those oils.
Yeah, no, so, I bet you're spot on with that.
So we got to remove that first, and then we can get the alcohol refined to the correct level, and then we put those flavor
makes perfect
points
sense.
Back in.
Yeah.
I would like 20% apple reduction with an increase in kiwi.
In fact, I bet that's exactly what they do, because I think that's what they do with like CBD and terpenes and shit.
Because the terpenes won't survive.
Yeah.
Terpenes will just burn off. That's got to be it. You guys hear that in the alcohol industry? We want you to start pulling the flavor out like the cannabis industry and put that shit back in there so we can taste it. Pretty much guarantee you people will buy that. Like real flavor. That's what they should call it. Real flavor vodka.
Yeah.
Just pick your your poison.
Mike's Hard Lemonade bullshit.
Yeah.
It's like,
well, they could sell like the actual vodka, bare vodka. And then they could give you the flavor components yourselves. Just like pour in your own cherry or apple or kiwi or insert other fruit you really want to, and make that little flavor bottle cost as much as the bottle of vodka.
Right.
So you don't have to go all out, but you can. In fact, you might not even need the whole bottle of flavoring if you have really intact taste buds and haven't smoked all your life.
Yeah. I don't know, man. Yeah. It's weird. I'm in this, I don't think it's probably just me, but it's like if I want to drink a fruit drink, I want to taste the fruit and not have alcohol ruin it.
There's got to be a way to make it deliver without having the alcohol ruin it, though.
Right. Because then, well, yeah, I don't know.
How do
you would think fruit drinks will be more hydrating than carbonated beer?
Yeah.
One would assume.
Yeah. Well, maybe that's the problem. Maybe we just need to figure out a way to encapsulate the alcohol with the fruit flavor, and so that the fruit flavor allows it to survive passage until it gets into the stomach, where it can just. We don't care at that point. It's just hydrochloric acid and other shit that's being digested slowly.
Yeah.
But for that first pass over the tongue, we need it to survive. We need it. That's complex. Now we're talking about basically like a fruit gusher.
Basically, yeah.
Fruit gusher booze.
That gets you drunk.
Yeah.
Oh man.
That would sound like hotcakes.
Yeah.
Make it a CBD gusher full of booze.
Yeah.
cannabis industry, vodka industry, you guys can have that. You got to team up though.
This gets back to how much of that is just social, and people wanting to be seen drinking that shit so they can post it on Instagram with their umbrella in the cup and shit. Because it's cheaper to fucking drink at home, but not everybody. A lot of people go out and drink.
Maybe this is small packages and it's meant for the adventure crowd because they want to be able to take this stuff with them, but they don't want to have to carry around a bottle, and because they'll have to carry that back in, but they can carry out some foil full of gummies with booze, and the foil is lightweight.
Man.
Of course, I don't think that. No, I mean that's going to get mixed with motocross at some point. That's a bad idea. Or maybe it's a good idea.
This is the problem, is that eventually somebody's gonna be near a chainsaw or some shit, or something, and you're gonna be like, oh, okay, we have to issue a public statement. We didn't intend for the alcohol gushers to be used in tandem with chainsaws. So now that warning is on the box, like, do not use alcohol gushers near chainsaws
or heavy machinery.
And then people are like, what happened with this? And then you look it up on YouTube, and somebody has the fucking video, and it's got 75 million hits.
And then the industry is like, we can't support this anymore.
Right.
It's too dangerous.
Yeah. So we all know where that goes. That's the problem. Is like, this is why these things always end up staying as ideas, is because we all know some fucking idiot in Alabama is gonna ruin it with the goddamn chainsaw. We know it's gonna be Alabama or Florida.
It's probably going to be Florida.
Probably.
I mean, chances are it's Florida. Like,
one of the two, yeah. More than likely Florida. We'll put the money on Florida. But ever so often...
We'll put a side bet on Alabama, too, just in case. Because the odds will be sufficient that if Alabama does win, we would recoup anything that we lost on Florida.
Right.
That's quite a spread. Fucking fantasy football right there.
Oh, jeez, yeah.
For years I used to... Alabama is... The only thing I knew about it was that it was home of a football team called the Crimson Tide.
Mm-hmm.
So in my mind, there exists a football program that also happens to offer an extracurricular education.
Basically.
I mean, that was like...
Basically.
That's what they were known for, the Crimson Tide. They were just it was a football school.
Basically.
I don't know anything else about that school. And I blame the media for not portraying them in any other light.
No, it's not an accident. And what you end up finding out,
because we know that Stanford develops like world-breaking or medical groundbreaking technology, and we know that Harvard and Princeton and Yale and Cambridge yield in lawyers.
But the thing is, those are long-term yields.
Yeah.
Whereas we know the football programs yield immediately, and that's what you end up finding out is the rhetoric behind a lot of the. So these coaches will get paid $800,000, $1 million, and then you look at what the faculty getting paid is nowhere near.
Yeah,
and this is why you're not inaccurate in saying it's a football program that happens to do extracurricular academic activities.
Yeah.
That's what a lot of these schools are, IU included. It's not that they don't have awesome fucking academic facilities. It's just they put the money in the football program. They put the money in the soccer. Well, not really soccer, even though the soccer program was one. Like, they had a really good soccer team. They weren't putting the money there.
Aren't they getting a new field?
Now
they are.
Now, after they won like 2 or 3 championships.
Yeah. And
that's what I'm saying. That's the difference.
Has one of the best baseball stadiums.
When's the fucking football team won a championship, bro?
When's
the football team won a fucking thing?
I don't know, but they just closed off.
Don't, because they haven't.
They just closed off the south end, and so you can't watch it from the tailgating field. They just closed it off now. Yeah. They're making it so that you gotta pay to get to see the game from inside.
As somebody who's been going to Oak and Bucket games since before I went to IU football is garbage. IU football has like almost always been trash in like a real bad way, where we're like talking like they're just now when they had Crean, they just now started getting to like almost winning season. I think they had a winning season that was like above 500, but that's like they're mostly trash, but their fucking coach gets paid like 8 to 10 times what the fucking professors get make. And this is a trash football team. Not a good football. I mean, I don't necessarily pay attention to IU football, so I'm just guessing that they're trash right now. Like I don't know for sure that they're trash, but more than likely they're absolute trash in a way where I feel comfortable saying it and having that shit on record, because I bet I go look and they're like, oh, they're ranked number 16 out of 18 or whatever. You know,
whenever there's a game in town, like, you know, there's all the commotion, but the general atmosphere is like, avoid this part of town because everyone's coming in from out of town.
Yeah.
The football, it seems like it's more like, let's travel to Bloomington to watch our team cream IU and spend money in Bloomington.
And a bunch of people in Bloomington looking for an excuse to get super trashed and act a fucking fool in public. That's what it comes, because everybody knows they're gonna lose, so they get twice as trashed to justify going out and showing up and getting trashed. So they're like, oh, my team fucking sucks, so I need to drink 12 beers.
Holy shit. So once every couple of years, I screw up and I drive by the tailgate lot because I'm going somewhere and I forget where I'm going and just happen to drive by it. And I'm always astonished at the amount of money that people put into their tailgating trailer, RVs, trucks, whatever. They're like, you know, I think the last time I saw it, somebody had this thing that they pulled out of the back of their truck. It like slid out on rails, and on one end it was a barbecue, and on the other side it was a smoker. And it's like, what? Why not just get a trailer at that point?
Right.
But and it's nuts because there are tents with people sitting in front of an RV watching the game on the side on a TV on the side of an RV.
It doesn't make
any
and
then the game is like 100 yards away from them.
But these are people that just want to be around other people doing the same shit to justify doing it.
But that's cool, and if they want to,
it's fine. Yeah, it's like cool. It's like cosplay.
Yeah.
It's cosplay for fucking people who wanted to be football players and never got to be football players.
Or
that's
maybe they were football players and they just now they're something
most
else.
Of them, no. There's not that many football players in America.
No, I mean like high school football.
I'm saying
players.
there's not that many high school. That's what I'm saying. Like as many people. It's like 10% maybe. There's just not that many people who play fucking high school football.
No,
like,
you know, you're right. Because
the numbers don't add up.
You're right. There's like, I think there were like 500 or 600 people in my graduating class. And how many people are on a football team?
You can only have 11 on the field at a time.
And out of all of those people,
you know what I'm saying?
At any given point, like...
And so here's the thing.
So there's 22 people on a field, but how many in a total team?
Let's say
40. Are there like
40
40
exactly. Let's assume that the people who are playing offense aren't playing defense. That means you have 22 players going both directions. Exactly. You have at least one backup.
And you have a special team.
Most likely two, and then special teams. Let's assume special teams is its own thing, which they're usually not.
But they might be.
Sometimes. I mean, usually they're an amalgamation of people from different offense and different defense, or parts of the offense or defense. But let's assume, for the sake of this exercise, that it's its own thing. So you really can only have about 50 people on a football team at any given time. Total. Any more than that, there's people who are not doing anything. Nobody's in this case, we're having the most refresh substituted player situation. That's 50 people on a team.
Yeah. There's not that many.
There's not that many.
That's like 10% of my graduating high school class.
And so here's the thing. So we had 100 people, or it was like maybe, I think it was about 100 people in my graduating class. In the graduating class, maybe 10 people played football. So we're gathering the football team from grades 9 through 12. It's not just from our grade. Mm-hmm. So even then, it's like, out of every grade, you're only having 10 or 12 people in each individual class playing at each high school.
Yeah.
For the most part. You know, you get these super big schools, double it. That's only 100 people. Yeah. They're still not talking about a lot. So this is where I'm getting back to all these tailgaters. most of them aren't even fucking playing, man. And this is where, this is like nothing again. It's like cosplay.
Yeah.
So I think this is where we need to look at, like, these people would look down on cosplayers, but they're just fucking cosplayers themselves. How many jerseys do they have? How many fucking jerseys? They're fucking wearing jerseys with other dudes' names on them. You got males running around with other males' names on them. They're fucking cosplaying.
Yeah. So,
there's nothing wrong with that, but it's cosplay. But nobody's calling it that. Nobody's calling it that because all of a sudden that shit is not cool.
I'm pretty sure that, like, the people that are hyper accessoried, they get all the accessories.
Yeah.
I think once it goes beyond utility, then that's when it starts becoming cosplay. Because I feel like there's a certain realm of, like, you know, you're an archaeologist or geologist and you spend time in the field, so you have clothing that allows you to go out and work in the field, and that's a look that becomes a look after a while,
right.
And then so the consumer eventually gets a hold of this look, like, hey, this is this rugged look, I'm going to start dressing like this, but I need a fancy bag to put my phone in and my dog and my other shit that I have to carry, and I need this other hat that it doesn't actually work.
It's just a different level of cosplay.
Yeah, it's just
a different level.
So it's just a variation of that theme, but it gets to a point where...
Well, because this is where...
But the archaeologist isn't...
But this is where it becomes elitist. This is why I don't mean to... I'm not talking shit about cosplay, because I do that shit myself.
No, I like
it's more so... This is like they are elitist because they don't want to consider themselves cosplayers, and then on the flip side, cosplayers get elitist because then they don't want to include other people in their shit. So this is people get elitist about shit real quick, man. It's really funny.
So I wonder what happens when you have the archaeologist and the archaeology cosplayer in the same room. Like, what happens?
It depends on how cool they are.
Yeah.
So here's the thing. I know an archaeologist cosplayer that cosplays fucking Sherlock Holmes.
That's awesome.
How fucking awesome is that?
That's so
awesome. This is why, but if you go to that person
of course they like Sherlock Holmes. Archaeologists are basically detectives.
But this is why it's like, if you go to that person about either one, they're going to be cool because it's a cool person and she's not elitist. But this is where the propensity to get elitist is one of these things that people will flip and get elitist, whether it's about video games, fucking Star Trek, Star Wars, fucking He-Man, like anything that people hold dear, they can either be cool about or they'll get super elitist about and don't even think they're being elitist about. Because what I realize is, as a comic book fan, like, let's talk about Dark Phoenix real quick.
Okay.
So, Dark Phoenix is not that bad. This film is not that bad, but it's because I didn't pay for it. I fucking pirated that shit. So when I watched it for free, it's not that bad. If I had paid 10, even $5 to watch that, I would be pissed off at that film. Now, my thing is, as a comic book fan, I have to allow this film to be made for non-comic book fans in order for comic books to persist in reality. I can't say, oh, I want this medium to be only held for people who are super fans, because then that limits the capacity for that medium to persist. So I have to let it go and let it be adapted for other people who aren't as interested to keep the medium going. So there's an element of, like, because I'm aware that I have to let other people access my favorite thing in order for it to keep going, I don't want to be elitist about it, because the more people that get interested in it... When I was a kid, these fucking Marvel movies didn't exist because I wasn't a dick about it. I mean, not I'm the only person, but because people like me weren't dicks about it, saying, no, you can't watch Iron Man movie unless you fucking subscribe to this shit. Like, you know what I'm saying? There's people out there who would have that notion, but there was enough people who were like, let's let this go and let the films happen, and we'll have our comic book nerddom and fandom, and we'll let the passive fans contribute to the culture too.
The first 3 X-Men movies, I felt like I was watching a variation of the comic that I'd never read. It was actually pretty exciting. It was like, these are characters that I thought that I knew, but I clearly don't.
Yeah.
And I think what ended up happening is it actually expanded my concept of the X-Men universe. It became a lot less of a an experiment on race relations, and it became more of a spectrum of humanity story, and it became more complex. And I think that they did a really good job of not framing characters as good or bad, but just being caught up in situations and reacting to situations in an environment. So it's, in a lot of ways, it allowed us to have this really fantastic sociological study about what do we do when we're faced with these conditions and actually have the ability to do something about it. It might not be pretty.
Yeah.
And there are other movies that kind of explore. Oh man, I'm not sure what it was now. It was like 3 kids found an alien spaceship and ended up with special powers, and it was all recorded on the one guy's video camera. I can't remember what it's called now. But that was...
Was it Chronicle?
Yeah.
That movie was pretty good.
That was
a good movie.
Yeah. It was...
It got slept on for whatever reason. I think it was just too... Like, people...
They wanted it to be Akira, but it was actually, like... I think it was actually Marvel Boy. I don't think it was... I don't think it was actually...
Well, I think it was an original. I mean, as far
No,
as...
I know, but I think
like,
there was I think it was Marvel Boy, because there were a lot of parallels between the kid and the father, and then the best friends, and it reminded me of that.
Well, what I was gonna say is, I don't think people are good right now at getting stories that they can't latch on to something else.
Yeah.
Like Alita Battle Angel fucking flopped horribly.
But it was good.
But it was, of course, it was good.
It was really good.
But because
it was so good.
Because you can't, as an American, because you can't latch on to anything and say, oh, this is referencing this, and this. Or this is a character that I've seen Alita, in so many things.
The unique thing.
It's a remake, I know, but in the sense of
they did almost everything from the 30-minute anime. They did almost everything, and they did a little bit of filler. Like they added some the rollerball stuff. That's not actually supposed to happen until after the kid, until she lets go and his body breaks and he falls off of the cable. Yeah. And she's up there like screaming. Like that's actually the end of the first Alita movie and or story, and afterwards it's like this whole thing about how she's trying to get to Zalem, and eventually she ends up teaming up with Nova, and they go to Mars. It's a fucked up story, but it's a story that's like, it's completely realized. It's full of all sorts of emotional turmoil. And they actually they did everything. Right. They changed a few aspects of the hunter killers, and who kills what's his name, Hugo, but they did a great job. There are a lot of movies, I think, stories that aren't going to get that chance because they're completely self-referential.
Yeah. Well, okay. Watchmen is an example. A lot of people did not like the ending change for the Watchmen, whereas somebody who, like, that ending from the book wouldn't work on screen. So there's shit where you get people who
those are limitations of the medium.
No, it just wouldn't work on screen, period, in the sense of the ending was...
I was actually really satisfied by the Watchmen ending.
No, I thought the ending worked. I thought the ending was fucking... And that's what I was getting at. The ending in the book made sense for a psychological thriller that's framed in pacing that allows you to see inside the psyche. That ending would not work on screen. It doesn't work for that medium. Yeah. You can't see inside people's thoughts the way you can in the book.
Well, so every time the movie attempts to do that, it ends up with this weird minutia that maybe 1% of the audience will make sense of.
I think this is where Dune... at first, it's really off, but by the end of the film, it works. But this is also why other people don't try to do that. Is because it's like it's very hard to pull off.
David Lynch is a genius, and it's hard to I think it's hard to tell a story of an awakening sleeper. Yeah. Like and because in the way that I read Dune when I was younger, there were parts of it that read like a dream, and like that's part of that whole sleeper thing, I think. It's not supposed to be completely linear or make sense. Right. And some of it's back in time. Some of it's jumping, like
well, because some of the
across
people don't
galaxy,
experience time linear.
Exactly.
So that is
Like,
where you're.
That's part of the way that spice melange affects your understanding, perception of the universe itself, and it's why the pilots had all mutated, because they were once human. The navigators or whatever.
Oh yeah.
They used to be humans.
Yeah.
That shit's nuts. I'm really excited about the Dune redo.
Yeah.
I'm really. I have
good
such
timing.
high expectations. Well, the technology's finally there.
Yeah. They're gonna have the capacity to do the story and the image.
They're gonna be able to give us ornithopters with flapping wings that look like dragonflies. It's gonna be great.
Yeah.
Like before, like in the Lynch version, it's like they get in that stupid trapezoid, triangular, or a diamond-shaped thing, and it just kind of hovers around, and that's not an ornithopter. The whole point of the ornithopter is that it had wings.
Right.
And then in the BBC one,
or it was sci-fi.
Yeah, the sci-fi.
Yeah.
Sci-fi one, like they did the same thing. It looked more like a aircraft.
Yeah.
But
I thought it was BBC, but I was wrong. I went back and checked. It was sci-fi.
But yeah, it's like, they did a great job, because they told all the story. Well, almost all the story. And but when I was a kid, the ornithopter was the thing that I was most keen on, because fucking flying machine with wings that flap. That's incredible.
Yeah.
In my mind, in the books, the worms were even bigger. And in the movie, it was like, they're big, but, Kyle MacLachlan climbed that thing way too easily.
Yeah.
It should have taken longer. The whole thing should have taken longer. Those things are huge. They're big enough to swallow up those big machines. They have to be much bigger. Because when the people get out of the machine, like, they're like running out, and you finally, the visualization is like, here's this.
Well, because they had like 30 people inside one.
Yeah.
So it had to be enough to hold 30 people.
Yeah. But yeah, when they do it again, it's gonna be great. I hope that the eyes aren't like, over blue saturated. I hope that they actually they do like the Night King, and just and do some color correction on the eyes and make it.
Well, if they just have it so the white parts turn blue.
Yeah.
But it looks real. That'll look cool.
That'll be good. That'll be good. Yeah.
Good enough.
I'd like to see. I'd like to see them develop like a fully realized.
I mean, they could wear fucking contact lenses. Yeah, at this point.
I'd like to see them develop a fully realized, like artificial Fedaykin martial art, and like knife technique, and even a Sardaukar fighting style, like, and have them be like vastly different. And maybe they might be related to or derived from some actual combat system or martial art or some that exists now. But I would
probably the what was it, the Qigong guys that supposedly use their voices?
Yeah.
Like that would be interesting.
We're gonna see Qigong and Krav.
Yeah.
Choreography in the new Dune.
Oh man.
Because when I read the books, like Paul's fighting style was, incredible. He could like move like Neo almost. In my mind, like he would deliver like attacks that were impossible to defend against, and it was only Fade who actually had any kind of like physical combat ability that could rival the Fedaykin or Paul. And he was like able to kill Sardaukar like easily dispatch them, so he's a badass.
Yeah.
And so I think that's like, it's going to be really interesting to see who they cast and how they make him into Fade, because I think that Sting has been so like tied to that character that he did such a good job too.
Fuck, he could play it again.
I know. he looks just.
Why not?
Man.
Why not, man?
That'd be great. He could be the Emperor.
Yeah.
He'd be great as the Emperor.
Yeah.
He's got a big enough.
I mean, they can de-age him enough right now.
That's right.
It's like.
Well, I mean, he's got like. When I saw the Police reunion at Bonnaroo many moons ago, not 20, 15, 13 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
And at one point, his head was on the Jumbotron. And he was, like, so at peace leading 80,000 people or whatever, like, in this hand-clapping OAOAO thing while they worked out some, like, technical issue. And, God, it was, like, the weirdest church music experience type experience I've ever had, because, 80,000 people all facing the Jumbotrons, all chanting together to this one big face. And it was beyond church. It was like, I've never experienced anything like it since. The closest I've been is in Detroit, and I think they had like 40,000 people in Hart Plaza. And so, admittedly, it was a smaller area, and more people were packed in, but it was like half the people. I don't even know how to describe how many people that is.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, because I can't see that many football fields away.
Right. Yeah. No, I've seen, I think it was about 200,000 people emptying out after a 4th of July celebration downtown in Chicago. And that was pretty insane, because we sat there and watched for a minute, and it was just so many people. It's like, you don't see that many people normally.
You don't. Even 80,000 people is like Bloomington's peak population during the school year. And I can't imagine all of the population of Bloomington during peak school year,
right,
like congregating.
Gathered in one place.
There isn't even a field. Karst Farm Park would probably be sufficient, and it would be the whole fucking thing.
Yeah.
It's like we were talking about a few months ago, how like it's actually hard to conceptualize big numbers, because after like 100 people, really, it's just like
pretty much impossible.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like one of those things where I think if people try to actively do NPCs in their head to do, just to try to imagine how many different people you can come up with, this shit is not easy.
Well, there's the monkey sphere theory, is that we can only really maintain around 100 to 150 meaningful relationships.
Oh, Dunbar's number.
Yeah. And anything beyond that is just like, just a face in the crowd and some noise. Yeah. And you might remember their name, but you won't remember anything about them.
Well, I mean, even that is the idea of, you cannot fathom things happening to multiple people. So when you have the idea of, like, say even 5 people get into a car accident, all of a sudden that's too many physical feelings for one person to actually feel. So when we start talking about 10,000 people dying, 1 million people, there's no capacity.
Yeah.
Like the Holocaust, it's not that it's meaningless in the sense of course it means something, but it's beyond human.
It's intangible.
It's intangible. It's beyond human capacity to process it. There's too much to actually comprehend it. So when people try to make it seem like people need, like, it's not humanly possible.
The first time I ever experienced that incomprehensible, intangible feeling, I was standing at the edge of the Grand Canyon with my parents, and I just looked at it, and I turned around and went back and sat in the car. My parents were like, "What? What's wrong? Aren't you interested in this?" Like, no, it's too big. I can't even look at that. Let's go back to Bryce Canyon, where I can actually like get down inside it and touch it.
Yeah,
it's just impossibly huge. And I've seen some big bodies of water from like the air, and those are impossibly huge. But when you're on the ground, where you can pick up a penny and it means something, or you can hold a bottle of water and it means something, and then to see 100 feet away from you this chasm that more water flows through than can be imagined every day even. And fucking now people are dying taking selfies off the edge because they want to get out to that spot so they can get that perfect view.
Yeah. It's fucking Darwinism, man.
Yeah.
That's where
They should change.
And this is again,
Darwin's Lookout would be a good name for those.
My thing is, if you have the energy to actually get sad over somebody who dies taking a selfie, you probably haven't paid attention to the rest of the world, like, to actually pay attention to some shit that matters. Because that's when I'm like, yeah, that person died. That's sad in itself, but do I have energy to expend over somebody who fucking does? No. Not in 2019.
Well, the shit part about it is that now the reaction from national parks, because they have to do something.
Right, yeah.
Is now they're building these, like, selfie platforms. In places that used to be beautiful scenic vistas. Now there's a fucking platform so someone can take a picture safely. Because people are so dumb that they'll walk to the edge of a fucking cliff and start posing and trying to get over so they can get the background, and the next thing you know, and they go fucking full Homer Simpson down the side of the fucking Grand Canyon.
Oof. Yeah. That's sad, man. That's sad that they try to protect them. That's crazy. Like, fucking let them fall over, man. Because that's where it's like, I can't, in 2019, there's so many people that are, like, put in shitty situations. I can't even pretend I feel bad for somebody.
They've got to nerf the Grand Canyon because people want to take selfies.
No, I can't feel bad. Like, I can't feel bad for that person.
10 years ago, there was a job at the Grand Canyon, probably at all these places, where somebody walked around with a fancy camera and actually knew how to use it because they're a photographer and studied photography in school. Yeah. And this was their dream job, to be a photographer at the Grand Canyon or some national park. And nobody wanted the high quality photo because I got this thing, it's good enough. And it was good enough. It's still good enough, but it's never going to be as good as a giant camera that has a giant lens and a giant sensor. And because physics still wins at some point. And
I mean, but part of it is, like, if you enjoy the space and enjoy the experience, you don't need the picture.
You don't.
So that's where
you don't, and
you don't need either picture.
More to the point, there are photographers from National Geographic who go to these places all the time, and they're waiting there every day to take the best picture of that place imaginable. And they will create it, and you can get that copy of National Geographic for whatever, $5, $10, even if it's a $20 version. And you have to look at it, and has a line in the middle of the image. It's still actually a better picture than any camera any normal person's going to buy, because no one's going to spend $10,000 on that lens or $20,000 on that Ford standard camera, that large format camera. That shit's not cheap. And then to have the patience to go there every day for months just to get the right shot.
Yeah. Well, it's funny, man. People are weird in the sense of, I remember when I went to the Louvre, and there was, the Mona Lisa, it's a fucking crowd of people trying to take, it's at the time, those, disposable cameras.
Oh, they were still around?
Yeah, so you had a bunch of people using those, trying to take their picture in front of that. Then you go to the Winged Victory, fucking nobody, man. Like, nobody even knew what the fuck the thing was, and they just had it in, some hallway.
Just in a hallway.
I mean, no activity, where you could just basically walk up on it and take a picture right in front of it, because nobody fucking cared, because they didn't know they were supposed to care.
Wow.
So it was this thing where I must have been 11 or something, and that's where I just remember seeing, this is before fucking smartphones, but it doesn't have to do with the smartphone. You saw it
and you knew what it was, and you're like,
yeah,
wow.
I saw it then.
You're like, I can get up right next to this thing.
I saw it then.
I can see the marks of how this thing was actually constructed.
Yeah, and other people are looking, trying to get themselves in a picture with the Mona Lisa because they want to show people that they went and saw the Mona Lisa, but didn't look at the fucking picture, and they didn't enjoy the picture. And that's where
that's the primary complaint about people who get video of concerts. Mm-hmm. They spend the entire concert watching their phone.
Yeah. I mean, but those people existed before smartphones. Now it's just easier for those people to be out everywhere.
Yeah.
And I think it's older people want to blame the technology and act like those people didn't fucking exist when it was just disposable cameras. But there was fucking those assholes running around with disposable cameras and the VHS.
God, those giant shoulder-sized, fucking the size.
The person's always in the camera looking at the thing, and they're not present. That person existed.
Yeah. I've been a camera operator on vacations before because people are like, here, take the picture, the picture. And it's the reason that I'm never in the pictures.
Right, yeah. At a certain point in time, there was that person that was not in the pictures. That was the camera operator, and it was oftentimes in a group of people, that person would be resigned to that. If there was a friend group or something, so it's like it's not something that's uncommon. I always ended
up taking the picture. I think.
Yeah, so that's the organic way that it happened. But then we have these inorganic trends of people being like scrapbooking. That's not organic.
No.
Nobody fucking. It was one of these things that happened.
Scrapbooking is a freaking OCD behavior.
Yeah, but then it became a fad where they're trying to sell the scrapbooks and get people buying the Polaroids. So then in the scrapbooking industry capitalized off of this thing that most people weren't doing, but then it prompted them to do this shit. That's again.
That's funny. Like, I feel like it had to have been before instant photography happened, because I feel like that's really the birth of the snapshot. But there had to have been some period of time when photographers were just like, oh, this is just, I can't stand waiting to get home and develop and to know if I got it or not.
Right.
And that's why instant happens. But then what happens is, now they're like, oh, great, this is great. Now I can set my camera up and do all these things. Because, if you're about to shoot large format, you don't want to waste that giant piece of film. You want to get an idea of what you're doing, and you want to, you have your meters, and you can measure all this stuff, and you can math it out. But until you actually frame something and see it, you don't actually know. So in my mind, there's this evolution of like, we need this tool to give us instant feedback. But then it gets in the hands of the consumer and like, hey, I can take pictures of everything now. This is so cool. And they didn't go through the process of, shooting a wet plate or shooting any large formats. And it's just straight into, I can shoot. And that's actually what's going on digital. We can just shoot. And you get instant feedback, and in a lot of ways it's actually made things better, because now you can improve composition like immediately, because we have these giant viewfinders.
Right.
And the camera in my phone is so much better than almost every camera that I ever had growing up, probably because it has a viewfinder that I can really see, and also because when I was growing up, when I was a little kid, I had no idea what I was doing. And so back then it was an element of chance, and now I'm more deliberate, but there's still.
Well, you had most cameras were manual, and most people didn't know what the settings were for, so it is this like crapshoot.
Yeah, my first camera had flower, action, and landscape modes. It was an automatic camera, and it was fine. I don't have any of those pictures. I loved it though.
Yeah.
That's one of those things that I think that. Last week we talked about, there was a brief moment where we were talking about how parents are like, they want to do everything for their kids and get them all the things they didn't have, and it occurred to me, it's like, well, doesn't it matter what the kid wants, and I think that was one of those things that like I actually wanted. So I think Happy Father's Day and stuff.
Happy Father's Day.